We always get excited for draft season, but I got to be honest, we have not done much draft at all.
No.
Because in my mind, Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
the Kings were going to have a first round pick. They're going to be playing in the playoffs. Well, no, no, no. The Kings don't make the playoffs. And now they have a lottery pick. They'll be picking 13th in the 2024 NBA draft. Every year we go to Bobby Gerould from
Hell
hoopobsession.com
yes.
because he's locked in. He does his homework. He watches a lot. He's going to continue to watch a lot as the draft prep really gets going before the NBA draft. So we had to pick Bobby Gerould's brain. Bobby, how you doing, man?
I am well. How about you two?
Good.
Great.
It's weird because I've enjoyed watching playoff basketball, but there's also like a part of me that's just so irritated that the Kings weren't able to just get a
Yeah,
series.
yeah. It's interesting. I was commenting to my wife watching the game today. I was like, "Can you imagine, the kind of season the Knicks had, and if you were a Knicks fan, and to have it happen this way, and then on the opposite side to be a Pacers fan and to have to live
Mm.
through some of those 2 minute reports and
Oh,
and all that stuff that we just know too well as Kings fans. What that would feel like, and just think, we were just getting all crazy about a first round last year. This was to go to the finals in your conference. So it's a crazy time. I was highly entertained though. I really was. I think there's been some good stuff here during the playoffs, and it's keeping us all on our toes.
Well, let's talk some draft here. The Kings
Sure.
have the 13th pick, and it's interesting because I feel like you hear that this draft is just not very good. At the top, there's no franchise altering players. But I always check myself when I hear that stuff because I'm going, there's always players in a draft. We
always.
see it every time. It may not be at the top, it could be in the middle. Overall, when you look at this draft, do you go, oh, there's a franchise altering piece at the top? There's some depth. What stands out to you so far in your homework?
Yeah, I would agree with the consensus feeling that it's not the greatest draft. I think, and that's because when you look right at the top, you don't see, you could find warts in pretty much all of the guys. Alex Sarr, there's probably some potential outcomes for him to be Jonathan or James Wiseman. You know
Mm.
what I mean? That could happen. So he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he's not really a center. So you know what I mean? He's 7'1", and that's probably the position he's going to play. But I think when you're looking at him, you've got to look at him a little bit more as a guy who can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. I think that's part of his game. I think he's going to score on putbacks and he's going to defend well. I think you can bank on that. But the shooting aspect is not great. His feel for the game, I don't think, is super great. And
Mm.
in some of the other drafts, I don't think he would be the consensus number one guy. So yeah, Morgan.
Well, I'm just because I just feel like, from what we have heard about him. So you don't even think that he would be like has that franchise player potential.
I think there's probably a path for him to get there, but I think there's just as easily a path for him to be Hall of Solid. You know what
Mm.
I mean, and
Yeah.
not Hall of Fame. So it just depends. And then you look at some of the other guys that are mocked up there near the top. Donovan Clingan is a big defensive presence, but he really doesn't move his feet that well, and he's slow. And so you wonder a little bit about that, how much it's going to translate. He's not great on offense, probably passable on offense, and you could say the same thing about Rudy Gobert. So, and if you could come away with a Rudy Gobert in your draft, you'd be all right
Yeah.
with that, right? So, I'm not saying that he's going to get to that kind of a ceiling, but I think there's a path for him to possibly be there. And then there's some other guys that I think are going to have to work really hard to get there. Guys like Isaiah Collier and Stephen Castle are two guys I'm probably a little bit lower on than most of the people. For Castle, I think the shooting aspect is a little worrisome. There's so many ghosts from past drafts, right, guys? That you people do these comparisons, and I hate the comparisons,
Yeah.
but if you comp him to, what if Stephen Castle's Elfrid Payton? You know what I mean? He has all the other tools, but he can't shoot. And I guess he did shoot it well at the combine, is what I understand. But as we've discussed before, I'm not super impressed with shooting drills. I just think unless you're seeing something Stephen Curry, Pedro Stojakovic like, where it's just make after make after make. I mean, in the games, you guys know you're going to be contested. So,
Yeah.
can you make
Contested, and you're shooting them. You're not shooting them from the same spot over and over again. You're on the
Different
run. You're coming
bodies.
off screens.
Right.
It's so different. So when guys just stand around, knock down shots, I'm like, I mean, it's cool. I'm not, but
Right.
like, how much can you take
Sure.
from that at a combine?
Right. And so that's kind of where I'm at with some of those guys. But then there's a few guys that are, I would say, are a little bit under the radar. I like Tyler Smith, who you guys I'm sure saw from the G League Ignite. 6'9", 224 is what he measured at, and he shot the ball well. I think during the G League season, from 3-point range, about 36%, which is like the league average. He was a plus defender as a 19-year-old, and I think he's the kind of guy that positionally would make a lot of sense for the Kings. I could see them using a wing forward who can stretch the floor a little bit and play defense. Now, the one thing with Tyler Smith is there's not much off the dribble game. But on a team like the Kings, who passes as well and creates as many open threes as they do, he could be a good fit. So I'm curious too, because you guys saw Tyler Smith, I'm sure, a few times. What your thoughts were?
We saw him. I don't know if Morgan actually saw him this year, because I don't know if she
Not
did a
in
G League
person.
Ignite game. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just remember that G League Ignite team looking so chaotic early in the season. I mean, they did not win many games. They were
Yeah.
awful. I mean,
Yep.
they couldn't make shots. They really
Mhm.
couldn't defend. And I don't, there's certain things that pop when you watch some of these guys,
Mhm.
but I don't remember. I have to go back and look and remember
Okay.
what Tyler Smith did in that game.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't,
All right.
I usually if someone pops off in a game, I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, look out. Like I
Mhm.
remember watching Scoop play, and I'm like, dude,
Mhm.
I see it,
Even if
right?
they
Yeah.
lost, like there was something
Yeah.
else, but like just this last elite season, because I do remember a little bit from G League Showcase even, and just nothing stood out to me. Nothing
Mhm.
was like making an impact on like this guy's making an impact on
And
the
that
game.
doesn't mean he can't be impactful at the
Right.
next level. I just
Sure.
I feel like it's so tough to judge when that team was so bad. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, and we're talking 13th to 20th pick. I think
Yeah.
right now consensus has Tyler Smith 20th. I'm advocating that he should be someone things should consider. I'm higher on Zach Edey than a
Mm.
lot of people would be. So what do you guys feel about Edey, and what do you
So
think he has a chance at the next level?
his size is obviously intriguing. The guy's a
Mhm.
Right.
beast, and he put up some big numbers. Like, does he move well enough?
Mhm.
Like, do you see him at the NBA level with his size being able to move? Because I think I see people joke about him, like, well,
Mhm.
it looks like he could be Boban out there. Like, but
Yeah.
then there's others who love his game, and he
Mhm.
plays with an edge a little bit. He's a guy that at the combine that hit some threes that people were kind of excited about. So I don't know. And I didn't watch enough college basketball this year, but I've seen enough of him over the last couple of years where I like him. I just don't know how that translates to the next level.
That.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of people who look at college player of the year type guys, and they go back to a Tyler Hansbrough or a Luka Garza. And to me, the difference that separates, and why those guys didn't hit in the NBA is they weren't freaks. Hansbrough, they called him a freak, but he really wasn't compared to NBA athletes or NBA size. Well, Edie's a freak. I mean, the dude is 7'4", 299 pounds, right? So, and I think he moves okay enough. I mean, he's, Jonas Valanciunas isn't moving at a great pace in the NBA these days, and I see some chatter that maybe he's someone the Kings are going to be interested in free agency. So, if you could get Zach Edey on a rookie contract, offensively, he really is skilled. I mean, if he seals down low, it's not just right hand, it's left hand, right hand. He can hit from 15 feet. He has tree trunks for legs, and the defensive rebounding is real. I mean, he just takes up so much space, and when he gets it, he has two hands on it and controls it. So I think Zach Edey has a chance, and I would be very interested in giving strong consideration to him sometime around the 13th pick. Some of the other guys that could be in play there that people don't talk about a lot are Devin Carter from Providence.
Okay,
little-
I've seen some of his stuff on social media, and I try not to get too excited, but I'm like, this guy looks like a dog, Bobby. He gets after it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. He does. He competes 100%. So he's offense and defense, and one of the best athletes, at least as far as how everyone tested at the combine. Now he's 6'2". You know what I mean? So you're looking again at a small guard who's a shooting guard. You know, he's not a point guard. So,
But I do think for the Kings, you know, at 13, you have to think about. There's so many people like, you can't draft another guard. I'm like,
Yeah.
look,
You can.
you
sure you can.
If Malik Monk's gone,
Yeah.
you may have to
Right.
think about that. And
Right.
I think even with Malik, the Kings need shot creation.
Here's my only thing to that though, too, because I mean, as soon as you go to you look at size and you keep and everyone in Sacramento, one of the things that they lack is size and length, right? And then even when Keon Ellis started getting more minutes and showing up, it was nice to see some length out there. And is there anybody in the draft that you would feel confident with that has that type of length, even if they're not NBA ready?
This is you going, okay, I can't have a guard. I need a wing.
Yeah.
And I one note though on Devin Carter real fast.
Wingspan?
Over 6.5, 8.5 wingspan at 6'2". He's long.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's a legit point right there, Deuce. And you know, I've always said measuring guys from the top of their head is silly. I mean, we don't play basketball with our hair follicles, right? We're how tall are we? How wide are we? You know, that's what it's about. So the 6'8" wingspan definitely is something that will allow him to probably play up a position. So that's a good thing about Devin Carter. Another kid that's interesting to me is Khalil Ware from Indiana. I think he's mocked probably a little bit lower, but he's a big man. Let me get his measurements from the combine. 7 foot 230. So legitimate 7-footer. And Indiana didn't have a great season. They're another kind of like the Ignite team. You know, you looked at them and they were just like, something's off here. But this kid started his career at Oregon and then transferred to Indiana. And the word out of Oregon after his freshman season was he's not a hard worker. He doesn't maybe love basketball, that kind of stuff. Well, Mike Woodson, I've seen some stuff with him, and he said that was never an issue, that he worked hard, he showed up every day, and was one of the more consistent players all through the year. So maybe that's a situation where you give a little grace to a kid who was a 19-year-old freshman. It just wasn't a good situation in Oregon. Maybe this was a better situation, and he answered the bell. And from a skill standpoint, he's a big who can step out and stretch the floor, can also have a little offensive aggression from him. So Khalil Ware from Indiana is someone that I would think the Kings probably should take a look at. And then the other guy that, as you were mentioning, Morgan, you know, is there someone out there? And yes, the kid Ryan Dunn from Virginia is, to me, you could take him right now and put him on the Kings, and he'd probably be their best defender. He's that special of a defender, in my opinion. You know, and brings to mind like a Matisse Thybulle type defense. You know, guys who are specifically known for that. Alvarado was a guy a couple years ago who, you know, he was such a good defender and such a pest. You just figured some way, somehow he's going to find a way. Now, the problem with Ryan Dunn is he can't really shoot, and he's offensively challenged. So
that's what I was going to say. That's the rep, right?
Right. But he's a little bit bigger than Thybulle, and although he didn't measure great either. I think here Ryan Dunn was listed at 6'8" or 6'9" all year. You get to the combine, you find out he's 6'6", 214. So really,
what is up with that this year, Bob? Because
dude, there were a ton of them.
Bronny was listed at 6'4" forever, and then all of a sudden I'm like,
oh yeah,
he's 6'1". Like what?
Yeah,
how you lost? That's significant. That's
right.
A big drop off.
We need some standards in how they measure, because I think, you know, at college these guys are obviously measuring with their shoes on, and then they give them a little boost for the program, right? So do they still have programs? Is that a thing?
Yeah,
they probably don't, right?
You don't. Well, if they do, they're like digital programs.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for the digital layout, they're giving these guys a boost. But yeah, there were so many adjustments I had to make in my database after the combine when I got these official measurements. I was just like, these guys are losing 3 inches, 2 or 3 inches, and not just one. I'm talking 10 to 15 guys. And for me, who's someone who's so data informed, and I'll look historically at the average size of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on winning teams. That's always been my thing. I'll look at the end of the year. I look at the winning teams. Let's look at the guys who played the most minutes, those 5. Let's look at their list all of them on the spreadsheet, figure out the average size. And small forwards are still coming in at 6'7". So, I'm changing guys' positions now. They're more, you're probably more of a 2 if you're 6'5" than you are a 3. And people could say, oh, that's semantics. It's somewhat positionless between 2s and 3s. But I still am old school enough to believe that it does make a difference. I think the bigger guys get more rebounds, and the bigger guys get out on defense and can alter shots better. It's just it's a thing, and it's anyone who's a Kings fan. And again, this isn't to pick on Harrison Barnes, but sometimes it's about the rebounds that Harrison doesn't get. You know what I mean? It's that's not his fault. It's just physically sometimes he's not quick enough to react, or not long enough to get there, or long enough to contest a perimeter shot on the wing. And that's something that, as we saw when Keon Ellis jumped into the lineup, really made a difference as far as just the hustle plays and the scrappiness. You see a guy like Josh Hart who's done such amazing things through this playoff run. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I know someone really well who we're not going to mention, who said that Josh Hart can't play, a few years ago. And I was just one of those guys who I had actually, because I don't have an official NBA affiliation, I can wager on these games, right?
Yeah.
So I've had some money on Josh Hart in the past, and you just know that that's a money player right there. If he's been your guy, like you got some money on a game, and you watch the plays he makes, you're like, this is my guy, So I knew. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no,
I'm
it's
with
and
you.
we all get it wrong. I mean, I screw up stuff all the time. So
it's always fun to going back to these videos that we do with you, because even if it's years later, and like there's been guys that you have been right about as well. But I just really quick want to circle back to someone like Ryan Dunn, because I know we talk about what he might be lacking on the offensive end, but then I think about some players, like for example, like Lou Dort, right, where he was a defender, known for his defense. That was his identity. Couldn't shoot, and then started creating shot. Would someone like Ryan Dunn have a good feel for the game, or just from what you've seen so far, maybe have a good feel for the game that he could develop that part?
I think so. Well, one of the things I love to hear was I saw an interview with Ryan recently, and he said he's been working out in California, and he's like, every day I'm just, I'm with a shooting coach and I'm shooting 3-point shots. So he's at least a kid who has that understanding that that's the ticket for him. I mean, he's a good enough defender right now that if he adds that 3-point shot, and I know, from talking with Doug Christie in the past, Doug would definitely say, get the defender and coach him up, to teach him how to play. So, I don't think Ryan Dunn is someone you're going to consider with the 13th pick. So he's someone that, in your wild dreams, maybe he falls to 45. Otherwise, I think you'd have to maneuver to go get a guy. And I also think, while we're talking about the draft, that's a really sound strategy, is to identify someone in the draft instead of looking at all these, I think the other day I said there's 78 guys that I think are draftable. Doesn't mean they're all going to hit, but there's conceivably. But if you go through and cherry pick your best ones, or the ones where you feel like there's some value, Ryan Dunn right now, late first round, early second round, if you really do believe that the shot has a chance, then target that guy, go get him, get aggressive, see if you can land a pick in the 20s, and in the early 20s, I think would probably be safe enough for a spot where you can get a guy like Ryan Dunn. I like there's a kid from San Francisco, Jonathan Mobo. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see him at all.
No.
So he measured 6'6", which isn't great, but he's just one of those guys that's jack of all trades, runs all over the floor, can finish in transition. Really stood out, was by far the best player on San Francisco's team this year. But he's someone I think you guys should definitely check out and should be in consideration. I think he's anywhere from undrafted to middle of the second round. And then one more I'll throw at you was kind of the story of postseason tournaments was Enrique Freeman. He's from Akron, and he went to the Portsmouth Invitational, stood out there, went to the G League elite camp and stood out there, and then got called up to the Combine. And from what I saw at the Combine again, it just looks like a natural player. He led the country in rebounding this year in the NCAA. So he's got that, but he also at 6'6", 6'7", can stretch the floor and make 3-point shots. So you got a rebounder who can make shots, and I think was just on the under because he was one of those late bloomers, as it happens. He wasn't a real big AAU guy who had a bunch of offers. He grew late in his, high school career. And then all of a sudden he gets to Akron, and it's like, he's checking the boxes one after another. He did it in college. He did it at Portsmouth, did it at the elite camp, and then looked good in the Combine. So I think he's someone who could sneak in there, and the fans would love him. He plays with a smile on his face. He's one of those guys. So Enrique Freeman is another one that is definitely one of my guys.
So when you look at where the Kings are at 13, would you rather them take a player at 13? And if you want, let's say you're picking, yes, I want to pick 13th. Are you at the point you want someone that can contribute right away? Or are you like, no, swing for the best player available there? And like, even if he doesn't contribute next year, it's okay. Maybe he can in the next couple of years. Or are you team like, maybe you should package that pick with something else and go after a player who's established in the league that could help the team?
Good question, and I'm conflicted for this reason. If you watch the Pacers right now, look at all the guys on the rookie contracts that they have.
Yeah,
and that's big in team building,
especially now, right?
Right. So having to pay Sabonis, Fox, and then you got to keep Monk. You got to find a way to keep Monk. And once you've got all that money spread out, you're going to kind of need some guys that are on rookie contracts. So if it's Zach Edey at 13, I could see him making this team a little bit better and helping. If it's Tyler Smith at 13, I think it's kind of the latter where you talked about it's going to take some time. But you can't just abandon the draft either. You know what I mean? I think some teams tried that strategy. Phoenix has messed around with it. Miami's messed around with it a little bit. But still, we're watching the playoffs right now. You're looking at Tatum and Brown, who were drafted, and the Pacers don't really fit that agenda. I guess Miles Turner was, one of their draft picks, but they've
and I know this guy wasn't crazy in that series, but I thought Ben Shepherd had some good moments.
He did.
And he comes
Shepherd,
in.
Nebhard. Yeah. And these guys were just, they were tough-minded draft picks who you could, Keon Ellis is probably, could fit in that same mold as a Shepherd or a Nebhard. So there's different ways to do it. I do think that, the time frame right now with Domas and Fox speaks to trying to get it rolling, and so I wouldn't be opposed, depending on who that player is that you're getting back with the 13th pick, and also what you're getting rid of. So for the Kings, I think their path to being better is to improve efficiency at Harrison's position and to improve efficiency at the backup point guard spot. I really do think that's the path.
And I mean, you talk about that being the path, just thinking about Malik Monk's future too. Like, I feel like that has so much to do with everything that can go down. Like if they do need to draft something to fill that void because they can't rely on just filling that spot with, with, I don't know, whatever else is available around the league. So I think there's so many things that factor into what the Kings need to do, and that's why I don't know the answer. But you even just mentioned too, like Zach Edey, actually he would be available at 13, you think?
Oh, I do,
Okay.
especially from the stuff I've seen lately. Now, it could be that the mock drafters are all screwed up, and
Okay.
that NBA teams feel like I feel, and maybe he will go earlier. But I think consensus mock for Edey is probably around 16 or 17 right now. So I do think that there's a chance that he's going to be there. The thing about trading that I worry about is, like there's been a lot of talk about Brandon Ingram. So in the last 3 years, Brandon Ingram has played 55, 45, and 64 games,
Yep.
right? So, and he will be making $36 million.
Ooh.
And he'll need an extension too. So,
Yeah.
Ooh.
So,
I mean, I like him, but it's tough. I can't imagine being a GM in the West right now.
oh man.
I'm just going,
Yeah.
who's the bad team? Like,
Right.
long off season, I know, but like it seems like some of the teams that were bad last year, like Memphis, it's pretty easy to look at them
Yep.
and go, hey, if they're healthy, like
Yep.
they're gonna be pretty good next year. Taylor Jenkins
Absolutely.
is a great coach. They play hard. They
Absolutely.
were a good defensive team with 800 players on the roster last year.
Hmm.
Houston, they're going to be competitive. What's Sengun look like now
Oh,
in year
Mhm.
4 or whatever?
God.
I mean, it's tough. And so you also like, I feel like it's a tough balance. You want to be aggressive, but it's also like you look at a team like Dallas, they didn't get like all-star talent at the deadline. I mean, they had the 2 guys in
Right.
Kyrie and Luca,
Yep.
which obviously that's goes a long way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But they got PJ Washington and Gafford. And
Yep.
if they don't get those guys,
Yeah. No, 100%. And at the beginning of the year, when they had Grant Williams, I really didn't like that look at all, and I was down on Dallas. I was like, "Oh, they're
yeah,
in trouble." And credit to them. They recognized that it wasn't working. They moved Grant Williams, who was kind of a darling of a lot of people, and just shipped him off to Charlotte. I mean, like, see you later. So yeah, I mean, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, those are two Hall of above average,
yeah,
right? I mean, they're not
Yeah.
great.
But you
So
put the right pieces around them and it can
right.
elevate their game as well.
Exactly. And so that's kind of, I mean, I think at the end of the day, if I was in Monty's shoes, I would probably be trying to draft at 13 so we can keep another
Mhm.
guy on a rookie scale contract. And then I've put this out here before. I don't know how you guys would feel about this, but I like Obi Toppin. He's going to be an
Mhm.
unrestricted free agent. I think if you had Obi Toppin, who, someone hit me right away when I said I liked Obi Toppin. They said, "What do you see in Obi Toppin that the Knicks and Pacers don't see?" And I was like, "Well, he was behind Julius Randle in New York, which he should have been. He's behind Pascal Siakam as a 4-man in Indiana, which he rightfully should be. But if you give him a chance to be a starter and do his thing, who's to say that he couldn't be more efficient? And I think he would be clearly than Harrison Barnes as a 4-man. He can stretch the floor. He
Mhm.
finishes in transition. Not a great defender, but not a horrible defender. He's
He's got
in
size.
right. So
Yeah.
I like a guy like that. And then deep cut under the radar guy that I like a little bit is Jordan Wara from Toronto. I've just seen him steadily get a little bit better. And, who's to say that he couldn't have an Aaron Nesmith type role in the NBA on a good team. So,
And you have to hit on those, right? Like
right,
those
the
are
low
so
cost
I mean,
dudes.
okay, I keep going back to Dallas, but like, look, Dante Exum was pretty impactful for them this year.
He was.
Derek Jones Jr. Are you?
Right.
I mean, he's going to get paid this offseason because of
Yep.
what he did, and he was a
Yep.
minimum guy.
Yep.
So even if the moves aren't sexy at first, can you hit on one of those?
Mhm.
Right.
That's where it can really shift things and improve your team. I think Toppin. I like Toppin a lot. I think ideally he's coming off your bench, but
Mhm.
he would instantly make this team better because of his athleticism,
His
his ability to
toughness.
run the
Mhm.
floor. And there's something there. He had talent coming out of college. I'm not saying he's a
Sure.
star by any means, but he could be a star in his role.
I think he could be an upgrade over Trey Lyles. Trey didn't have a great season this year, to
Yeah,
be
he was
honest with
banged
you.
up,
He
up
was,
and down
yeah,
at times. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not down on Trey Lyles, but I'm just saying. And if you look at the Kings, so JaVale and Alex Lynn are both unrestricted free agents this summer, right? I
Yeah,
believe
I think,
that's
I
correct.
believe
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah. So you're probably going to need, a backup 5 in there, which again, that's why Zach Edey might make a little sense. But as we all know, Mike Brown has to believe in him too, right? It can't just be a deal where this is Monty's guy or Wes Wilcox's guy or Doug Christie's guy or whoever it is that finagles in there onto the Kings roster. Because if Mike doesn't believe in him, then we know it's just not going to happen. It's got to be everybody buying in on the whole deal. So it's certainly interesting times, and I've got my popcorn. I'm ready for everything that's coming up. Summer League. I've already got the reservations made, and looking forward to it. I can't believe
the California Classic here too.
Lots of basketball coming up. It never stops, Bobby.
Always.
We really appreciate you giving us some of the knowledge out there. Of course, we encourage everyone to check out hoopobsession.com. Bobby ranks the players in the draft. It's not a mock draft. He ranks them. He spends a lot of time researching, watching guys. I mean, when I say he goes deep, okay? He's watching games all the time. Yeah. He's at G League Showcase. You will, if there's a basketball game going on, Bobby Gerould's probably watching it. So check out
hoopobsession.com. And again, like I just want to give a little disclaimer. It's still 5 weeks to go in this process.
For sure.
And on Hoop Obsession, this is when I really start to get into doing like a couple or three prospects every day, just concentrating on them, really breaking down what I want to see in them, and then I'll write a little something about it on Hoop Obsession. But that's what'll be coming on Hoop Obsession. Right now, you click on a guy and you're just seeing highlights mostly. Yeah. I've got a couple of capsules, I call them, written on a couple of prospects. But in the coming days and leading up to draft time, we should be talking 75 to 80 capsules written about the different guys, and that'll give me a better feel, as I really zone in and be like, okay, I like this guy better than that guy.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's a long way to go.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah. We appreciate you so much, man. And
thank you.
I'm sure we'll be checking in with you again before the draft.
All right. Continued success to both of you. You guys are killing it.
Oh, dude. Appreciate you, Bobby.
Dude, for real. Like, just every time I turn on the TV, there's Morgan. Every time I turn on the TV, there's Deuce. Look at you, too.
We're grinding.
We're doing the darn thing.
Hey, we're all doing this thing together. So
it's a grind.
Yeah.
It's fun.
When you guys run the world, remember your old boy, Bobby.
We'll never forget Bobby.
All right.
Oh, my God.
Bobby, thanks so much for the time, man.
You got it.
It's the one and only Bobby Gerould.
Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, they tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, the